for this beautiful day. Thank you for this cooler weather. Thank you for patience. And thank you for great minds to do research and go through the process of choosing a new executive director for our citizens and for the staff. Please grant us the wisdom today to make the best decisions that we can for the future of this organization, of the citizens of this county, and for the staff of the ECUA. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The next item is the adoption of the agenda, and I have one item that I would like to add, and that would be 6B, Executive Director Selection or discussion. And Mr. Sorrell, you had a couple of items.
Yes, ma'am. I have two items to add. They're both handout items. I think I think the board's well aware of them, but I'm required to make the notification. The first one is a notification of emergency purchase, residential collection carts. The second one is another notification replacement of manhole.
Does anyone else have any other items to be added to the agenda?
That's 9E and F, ma'am. I don't think I said that.
Yeah.
Madam
Dr.
Chairman. Yes, I would like to add the topic of Town of Century.
Okay. That would be under new business, unfinished
New
business?
business, I'm sure.
Town of
Town
Century.
of Century, he said?
Yes, that will be 14A. Is that all? Okay,
Oh, thank
sure. If nothing more, is there a motion to accept the agenda as amended?
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded. Please vote. And it passes 4-0. Item 4 is public hearings. We have none. Item 5 is open forum. Is there anyone who wishes to address us in open forum? I see some pink slips coming. Thank you very much. I have two people who have asked to address us. The first one is Puchelle Schneier. Ms. Schneier, you are recognized.
Good afternoon. My name is Puchelle Schneier. I live in District 3. This is regarding the executive director appointment. Would this be the appropriate time
Sure.
to express my opinions? I'd like to thank the board for inviting me to participate in the interview process for the executive director. I felt like the process was fair and gave each applicant ample time to convey their message and explain their experience and why they would be a good fit for ECUA. Of all the all of the applicants, all 4 of them, interviewed extremely well. However, there were 2 applicants who stood out to me as being the most best fit for ECUA. They seemed to understand that there are challenges and needs of the community, and they seemed like they would be the most equipped to deal with overall issues regarding ECUA infrastructure, budget, employees, and the community. So do you mind if I share my opinion on which 2 those are?
That's fine.
Well, I thought Rebecca Sheldon really stood out when she said that the #1 job is to protect public health. She seems like she knows what's expected of the job and has the experience to do the job well. And Mr. McCrory also seemed caring and like he had an understanding of the infrastructure or the interaction between ECUA and the community. It's never easy to have to choose one person over the other, and it's very difficult seeing Mr. Sorrell retire, but I feel like we have some really good applicants to choose from, and I feel like the board will make the right decision if it comes to a vote. So thank you for inviting me to personally interact with the applicants and for allowing me to share my opinion right now. Thank you.
And just so that the public could know, in order to make this process as broad as possible, The applicants did meet with the staff of the ECUA, and we included all of the Citizens Advisory Committee in the process. This is a big decision, and we'd like to get input from as many people as possible. The next speaker is Mr. David Acuff.
Ms. Benson,
Yes.
I
I'm
do
sorry, I
appreciate the Citizen Advisory Committee members and the public that did show up. You know, it means a lot, so.
Sure, absolutely. Sorry for not recognizing. Mr. Acuff.
Good afternoon, and thank you for meeting with me to present. I'm the general manager of Homestead Village, Pensacola.
Press your button with the light. There you go. Now we can hear you better.
Good afternoon. I'm David Acuff, the general manager of Homestead Village of Pensacola. It's a retirement memory care. We have a 180 bed license. We are a non-for-profit. We pay our bills on time, every time, but we were saddled with an expense of $36,000 because of an incorrect meter reading. 2 years ago, it did not seem like the meters were being read correctly. I contacted ECUA and asked that the meters be looked at. They told us we had to get a plumber. We did that. We went through all the steps. They finally came out and then replaced the meters, and everything has been fine. And then I got we started seeing an increase back in March through June. The increase in the usage seemed more. Back in June, I was able to get I contacted several people in the office. Long story short, it was discovered that ECUA, when they had put the meters in, had used an incorrect multiplier, and so we were not being charged correctly. And then after about 24 months, it was discovered, and I'm afraid it was discovered because I started asking questions. But this is devastating to us as a nonprofit. Again, we pay our bills all the time. We have 15 meters, 15 different locations there on our 12-acre campus. Even today, they found a problem. In fact, I don't know how this will work because we had ECUA out because there was a leak. It was determined it was on the ECUA side, but it's been leaking to one of the cottages that's in question here. But I've talked to Mr. Gabriel, Mr. Gabriel Brown, I'm sorry. He's offered to give us a 36-month payback. I appreciate that, but I'm really asking forgiveness. I mean, we have paid it fair, paid it every time the bill came in, and to all of a sudden have a $36,000 bill, I mean, you can imagine how staggering that would be. And it was not through our fault at all. It was something that was done on the calculation of a multiplier on the meter. And I originally called because we were concerned about it not being correct. And so when we were getting our bills, we thought they were correct. And we spend quite a bit of money on water every month. But anyway, I'm coming this afternoon just asking for forgiveness of that. And that's my case. How's that?
Thank you. If you'll just stay there, there are a couple of people
Yes,
who
ma'am.
are wanting to be recognized. Ms. Campbell?
So, you say you do have a leak on, and it's on our side?
Today they discovered it. We have called a couple times. They said they had no record. They did come out today, discovered a leak, and it is to one of the cottages that I don't know which side of the meter. I still don't have all the details, but they spent quite a bit of time out of our property today working on that.
Okay. I'm going to ask Steve a question, if that's
Sure.
okay. Do we know if that leak may have contributed at all to the $36,000 or?
Mr. Sorrell?
Yes, ma'am, I do. It did not. The leak on ECUA's side of the meter would not go through the meter, so there would not be any charges to the institution. So no, it did not. If it happened today, it wouldn't affect the $36,000 anyway. But it was on our side of the meter, so it was an ECUA leak. It would not affect them at all.
So can I
Sure.
continue to ask questions? So was the So this is based on, entirely on consumption, or is there, was it any of it averaged?
No, ma'am, the bill, is it all right, ma'am?
Sure.
The bill is based strictly on consumption. They went back and looked at the history, and then they used the historical data, and for them, it's pretty obvious. And I don't think they're disputing the consumption or anything like that. It's just the bottom line that there was it was really a programming error on the meter, caused it to read one digit off, and that's what caused the error.
You may continue if you,
Thank you, I'm gonna listen to the rest.
okay. Dr. Walker?
You wailed on me. Madam Chairman, I think it's a really bad thing that these mistakes happen. This is not the first one. Apparently, it's not going to be the last one. But I think staff, Mr. Sorrell and staff should move heaven and earth to make it be the last one. It's making such a mistake and causing such a difficult situation with a customer, for a customer, if it happens more than once, I think it's grounds for dismissal. Just my opinion. But we've got to stop this, and I think I urge the executive director to do whatever it takes to get it stopped. That would be a nice gift to the new executive director coming in, because these are very embarrassing situations. As to Mr. Acuff's situation, I'm sympathetic, but at the same time, I'm also sympathetic to the other 90,000, 100,000 water customers we have, and we need all the earnings that we can rightfully claim in order to continue trying to keep the rates as low as we can, and the product as good as we can. So I sympathize. I'm sorry. I beg forgiveness, but I personally think we have to collect the money.
And
Go ahead.
Mr. Sorrell, we have had some communication from you, and I understand that the protocols are changing fairly dramatically. Is that correct from the staff perspective?
Yes, ma'am. A couple things have taken place under, really under my order, but basically we have about 1,000 of these meters, and we've gone out and inspected every single one. I actually sent the field crews out, and they've photographed every single register, every one of them. They brought that back in the building, and building is now comparing that against the actual programming status and so on to make sure that the program is correct. We found 14, of which I think Mr. Acuff has 3. We found 14 so far. They still got about 50 to check. We're taking a proactive stance in the position that any one of these that we're finding that was read wrong, we're contacting them now to try to resolve this. So that has taken place. The other thing is we put a process in place where before the crews can actually install that meter, they have to actually get a photograph of it, and they have to check with billing before that meter is installed to make sure that the proper register is on there. It's a human error, it's a programming error, and they've missed one digit. So what it does is, for example, it'll read 10 instead of 100, or it'll read 100 instead of 1,000. And that's where the error has been. It's just simply a programming error, one digit off, but it's a major impact on a big user like Mr. Acuff. But we put process in place to find them, and we put process in place to stop it, and we're trying to correct the ones that we found right now.
Thank you. And Ms. Campbell, if you don't mind, I'm going to jump to Mr.
Yeah,
Perkins,
go right
and I'll
ahead.
come back to you. Mr. Perkins.
Yeah, like Dr. Walker, have been frustrated by these, but I know that in a couple of the other cases, what we have done is we have asked our staff to get with the people, re-examine it, and be as aggressive as they can in trying to estimate low. I mean, the reason we can't do total forgiveness is our bond covenants don't allow us to give away any free services. So we couldn't do that. Because frankly, I'd be in favor of that if we could, because I feel like it's our responsibility to bill accurately, and this gentleman, no good deed goes unpunished. He realized, hey, and a lot of people don't realize because they just automatic pay it and they never even look at it. It's in the books, it just automatically pays. But this organization saw that it was you know, that seemed low, contacted us, took initiative, tried to make it right. And then what we're doing is we're kind of punishing them by saying, hey, you know, thanks for finding that for us, and, you know, we're gonna slam you for it. I think we ought to ask our staff to, you know, take a second look at it with them, be as aggressive as they legally can in lowering it, you know, and do what we can to remedy it as much as we can.
Thank you, Mr. Perkins. Ms. Campbell?
Yeah, I'm going to reiterate what my fellow board members have said. This is a second one this month, I think, that has come to our attention, and we asked staff to go back and be as aggressive as they can with the estimation. And I'm all for giving these people longer to pay for it if they need it, because, I mean, budgeting that's what you do at your facility. I know that, and you have to be able to know what your costs are going to be next year, so you know what to charge your people. So I totally understand where you are. I understand where we are, but I do want staff to take another look at it, be as aggressive as they can, and maybe give you longer period of time to pay any back.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell. Dr. Walker?
Thank you. I agree with what Mr. Perkins said and Mrs. Campbell said, and I wish to ask, Madam Chairman, would you please ask of staff whether it would be, is there any legal reason why we could not offer a 60-month payback period on a pretty large amount like this instead of 36 months?
Okay. Mr. Sorrell, if you'd like to respond.
To be honest with you, I'm not sure of that answer, but what we'll do is we'll investigate that, and we'll see what the rules and regulations are. If necessary, I'll get with Mr. Beasley, and we'll try to accommodate the best we can. I don't know what the limits are by law, but I'll find out, and we'll employ the longest period we possibly can.
And we probably ought to have some consistency in that, since this has come up a couple of times. Mr. Perkins?
And I guess we'll set up a contact with them and everything, and establish that communication, let them know what's going on. You know, in addition to the, you know, just to the financial inconvenience of it, from a business standpoint, it's real inconvenience, because a lot of times they have profit and loss statements, and they base each year's bonuses and stuff on productivity, or hiring and firing on productivity. And so, you know, when we do this to an organization, and then even worse, a nonprofit organization, I mean, it just makes it so much worse for them. So anything we can do to remedy it, and it seems like it seems like it's being remedied, because most of these problems are from a couple of years ago, but still they're big problems. We should try to ease the burden where we can.
Okay. Dr. Walker?
Yes, Madam Chairman, is there anything staff can do to make certain that these kind of mistakes don't happen again?
Mr. Sorrell, I think that's directed at you.
I think I answered that. Basically, we put a process in place it's like a double check before the meters are actually placed. So that's going to take place with all the new meters. Any old meter that's out there, we went out and took pictures of it, and we're now personally verifying it against the actual meter code that's put into those. So we're checking on it now. It's you know, this stuff's been going on for a while, and until we get these last bunch done, you're still going to have a few, but we're trying to aggressively deal with each one of these and try to be proactive and talk to them and try to resolve these issues. But you know, I do think that a lot of them will come from the board and ask for a waiver, just like the rest of them have been doing. But we're trying to resolve those in advance.
Go ahead.
You said the problem is with a step, what do you call it? Step multiplier, a multiplier effect, a multiplier. Is that multiplier, does that take place within the meter, or does it take place back at an office after the meter has been read?
Mr. Sorrell?
It's in the meter, and it's all in the program that's installed in the meter before it's put in the field. When the meters are bought from a company, they may come in cubic feet or they may come in gallons, and all that has to be set forth the way we use it, because we bill by gallons. Then there's actually a programming code that has to be put into that meter before it's put in the ground. And it's just somebody had made a human error and they just missed one digit. mean, it doesn't sound like much of a big deal, but it is, because it's either 10 or 100 or 1,000, so the multiplier.
Thank you.
Ms. Campbell?
So can these, is this just one person doing the programming? Can it not be double-checked?
Mr. Sorrell?
That's what we're doing now. We're double checking everything, but no, it's not one person. It's a large number of people actually installed these meters in all the different regions. You know, we've got 100,000 customers, so it is a big deal. So what we're doing now is we're checking all of the major meters, the 2 inches or bigger. We haven't really gotten to the residential yet, but they're not as much because consumption is quite lower, and we'll find those over time. We have what they call exemption report or red flag reports, and basically it'll kick an account back if it says it's using too much or not enough. The problem is those parameters are set high because of limited staff. The board authorized 2 additional people, and that's exactly what those 2 additional people are going to be doing, is looking at all these different accounts to try to see if there's any anomalies that we need to be aware of.
Okay, I see no more lights. I think you're hearing that we're all very sympathetic to your plight and slightly outraged that this has happened. You know, I've always thought when you pay your bill, it's done. And I'm sure that was your experience as well. Our previous attorney has repeatedly said we can't give away free water, and maybe I better ask this attorney, since he may have a different point of view, but do you have any advice regarding this, Mr. Beasley?
There's been a couple issues mentioned to include the extension of the payment program. I'm not sure that that is restricted by the bond requirements. I've reviewed the bond requirements when this question came up previously, and it's very clear that ECUA cannot in any way discount, give away their services of any type. You know, when you fall into the realm of a billing error, we have a little bit more complicated scenario. So what we have is clearly a consumer that has consumed some of our product, but not the level of product which they've been billed for. And so if we had some type of matrix to avoid giving away the free portion, but reconciling the overbilling, then that would be great. That would not run us afoul of the bonding requirements. The fact is we can't give away services. So if we can't figure out how to apportion the mistake, if you would, to account for the actual product received and services received, that's the conundrum. And if there's a way to do that, then we might want to tackle that. But we're first charged with not giving away the service.
Thank you. And I think what you heard is we can't forgive the bill, as much as I think there are 4 people up here who would be inclined to do it. What we do need to do, and again, you've heard it from the others, to make this as easy for you as possible with a payment plan, and perhaps, you know, an estimate of the consumption that may not be what you have gotten, because we had a previous one where the estimate of the consumption was somewhat lower than initially. I think this will be referred to staff to try to work out something with you, and I'm sorry it's not everything you want, but we want to make this as easy as possible for you, and accept our apologies for what happened.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Acuff. And I have no more pink slips.
Madam
Oh, yes,
Chairman.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
And I would think that when you say refer to staff, it would be Mr. Gabriel Brown. Is that who Mr. Acuff should talk with further?
I think so, and I think maybe Mr. Sorrell will engage in that as well.
Yes, sir, it'll be Mr. Brown, and Mr. Brown's familiar with Mr. Acuff. He's talked to him before, and you know, Mr. Brown informed me that Mr. Acuff would be here today. So they know each other, and you know, if there are any losses, if there are any leaks, we need to know about that. So keep that in mind. Other than that, there's not a whole lot I can do about it. But if there's any losses in consumption, if there's any leaks or anything like that, certainly we will be able to look at the historical data and be able to make adjustments. But without that, we can't.
Well, I think we could be more creative than that, you know, and the reason I say that is is some years, like this year, may have been very, very dry. And so there may have been considerably more use based on the average rainfall for that year. Whereas if you had a really wet year under any of these years, there may have been considerably less use. So I think that would also be worth examining. All we want to try and do is be aggressive as we can on getting an accurate, depiction of use and trying to be, as fair as possible, given that most of this was all of it was our mistake.
Thank you, Mr. Perkins. Ms. Campbell?
I agree wholeheartedly with what Del Perkins said, that we need to be as aggressive as possible.
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you all. The next item on our agenda is presentations, and it's our monthly Recycle Star. We have 17 people who have been admirable in their recycling efforts, and we'd like to reward them all, but we'll pick one. I'm going to come down to you, Mr. Perkins, and let you pick one of these. And I hope it's not a 6-9 problem. Number 10, okay. And number 10 is Arthur McAlexander and wife. So it's a team effort. So if our communications folks can get with them and give them all the appropriate rewards. Thank you. Okay, item 6B is executive director selection. And I think we all believe that we had 4 really good candidates. As a matter of fact, we had a good pool of candidates, and I want to thank Mr. Colin Benziger for all of the efforts on behalf of the ECUA in bringing them, and we had good meetings last week where we interviewed all of them individually, and then we had a public meeting in which we asked them questions publicly. At this point, we have an opportunity to have further discussion. We can go any way we want. We can simply have a couple of votes where we rank them, or we can discuss some of the issues and advocate for our personal choice. It's up to you. Mr. Perkins.
Well, I agree. I think it was a really good process, very fair, very thorough. And we did have outstanding candidates. They all presented well, and would do a good job for a lot of different entities. I think there are a couple that fit with us ideally. After looking at them, they were the same 2 that Ms. Schneer said. I think that that they were all good. I thought they were all good, but those 2 I felt like had 2 things I was looking for, and that was genuineness and vision. And I would be happy with either of those 2. I have my favorite, but I just want to say I like the process, and I appreciate all the citizens that participated and the staff that did a lot of work to show everybody around and get them acquainted with us, because it's a 2-sided equation. I mean, we've got to want one, and then they've got to want to be here. So I think staff did a good job of selling us as well.
Thank you, Mr. Perkins. Dr. Walker?
Madam Chairman, my first choice is Rebecca Shelton, and I've talked to a dozen or more employees last Thursday during the public reception, and I got opinions from a dozen or more employees, and the biggest number of them also supported Ms. Shelton. So that's my first choice.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Campbell.
Wow. So that's 4 people already in the room that agree. Man, Dr. Walker and I rarely agree on 2 things back to back that quickly. And I agree wholeheartedly with what he just said about Ms. Shelton. I also agree with him and Pichelle about McCrory. I really liked him, and I was happy to know that he would move to Pensacola if he was chosen, even though he lives 45 minutes away and wouldn't have to move. So but I really like them both. And I also like Bruce Woody. I really do. I don't think he was as bubbly as maybe the others, but I thought he would make a wonderful executive director. He knew a lot about the processes. So I've got my first, second, and third. They're not exactly like my fellow board members have said, but I do like those three. So that's my thoughts, and I can't wait to vote.
Now, I will say, on behalf of Mr. Woody, his priority was keeping the rates low. I thought that spoke to us, and it spoke to a lot of people. I was absolutely wowed by Ms. Shelton. There's a dilemma in an organization when you pick a new leader. Do you want somebody who's had a great career and wonderful credentials, and they come here to finish their career? Or do you want to pluck someone who is on an upward trajectory, who maybe isn't totally tested? And, there are times for each. If you've had kind of a rocky time in an organization, you want that stability of somebody coming in who's going to be at the helm. We've had a good run, and it's probably a good time to test someone who maybe hasn't been totally vetted in terms of, Ms. Shelton has never been the head of an organization, but she has certainly shown leadership. And my inclination is to support Ms. Shelton as our leader. I do believe that it's very important to bring out publicly one thing, because we operate in the sunshine, and we've read all of these pages of materials about these. And I think the public has a right to know without having to read all of those pages. But in Ms. Shelton's background, there was a personal bankruptcy. And I have discussed it with her. I wish it weren't there, because when there's a bankruptcy, there are people who don't get paid for their goods and services. And we hold our customers' feet to the fire to pay things. Is it a disqualifying thing? And truthfully, I've grappled with that for the whole weekend. But ultimately, I think we believe, and the system believes, in redemption. And that sometimes you make mistakes, and there are vehicles for correcting those mistakes. And there's nothing that I read in her materials that suggested a pattern like this or something that was disqualifying. But I do take it seriously, and I think the public has a right to know without exaggerating the importance of it. So it is my intention, when I do my ranking, and heck, it's a public record anyway, I'm going to put Ms. Shelton first and Mr. Woody second, because I think ultimately having a professional engineer is very important to this organization, and they are the two who are the professional engineers. Ms. Campbell.
I thank you for those words. I also spoke to Ms. Shelton about her bankruptcy. It was 20 years ago, and when I first got the booklet, I tried to look at it, and I couldn't get any more than was on the docket, because it was 20 years ago. And 20 years ago, you had to go to the courthouse and pull files and look at them. So it looked very short and brief, but I couldn't really tell a lot. So I did talk to her, and she was a young girl with single mother with children, and she regretted that tremendously and learned from it. And I grappled with it too, because we make everybody pay their bills. So I do think in this case, it being so long ago, 20 years ago, 20 years, 2 kids and a marriage ago, so she is going to be my first choice.
Well, and I think it bears asking. I had someone who went bankrupt that affected me and my business, and it feels real personal when it happens to you, when someone does it. And that person was in the financial business, and subsequent to his bankruptcy, he was not allowed to be in the financial business anymore. I need to ask our attorney if there is any reason that this bankruptcy would in any way affect our ability to float bonds or do any of the public transactions that we do. Is this disqualifying? And Mr. Beasley, if you could respond.
The short answer is no. The position does have command and control over a large budget, but doesn't have any direct ability to utilize funds without a considerable degree of oversight here, being the accounting department and the various requesting department. Money isn't handled very lightly through the ECUA, and there's a lot of checks and balances. The executive director is a fiduciary of the trust of ECUA and the funds. When asked to look at the bankruptcy and review the docket, I did so. It was in 2000. There weren't other indicators that it was a result of any type of bad activity, so to speak. It just appeared to be being overwhelmed with financial situation at the time in the year 2000. So the bankruptcy itself wouldn't legally disqualify the candidate, and the indications around this bankruptcy were such that it didn't seem to be a situation that would create a lot of red flags.
Thank you, Mr. Beasley. Dr. Walker.
I would like to go on the record as stating why I support Ms. Shelton. I think it's good for the public to know these things. The thing about her that, that impressed me most, number one, was a vast amount of experience with water and wastewater. She doesn't know anything about sanitation really, but we have excellent people who can take care of the sanitation side. And the water and the wastewater, as a two-time engineer, she's definitely qualified to work in those areas. She has worked in those areas very successfully for 20 years or more. She's risen to the position of the number 2 person in an agency that provides utilities to a population of 900,000 or more people, Gwinnett County, Georgia. So she certainly has experience on a very large scale from where we sit. And so that's important. Secondly, she used the word passion, a passion for public utilities service, and she used it passionately when she spoke. And she was not the only one. Mr. Coffey and Mr. McCrory also spoke passionately about their feelings for the work they do. But she also did, and in a very impressive way. And having someone at the helm of our organization who has a genuine passion for public service, and specifically by the way of performing utilities, to me that's really someone you want to hire. And finally, I was impressed by the very broad range of community life activities in which she engaged. She's been spreading herself very thin in community activities over there. President of the local Rotary, president, I think, of the National Rotary, active in organizing a 5K run every year for the Rotary Club, active in church activities. These are the things
Creek
that she...
Creek cleanups.
Free cleanups, okay.
Like that.
In short, she has worked hard over there to be a representative to the community, from her organization to the community. And that is also something that will serve us very well. I can imagine her being president of Downtown Rotary before too many years pass, especially now that Gulf Powers no longer will be providing presidents of that group. So those are the principal reasons why I was very attracted to hiring her. There are other good candidates. I feel bad about not being able to offer them a job. I wish we could hire 2 or 3 of them.
She also said she would go to an opera. What can I say? Mr. Perkins?
Two things about Ms. Shelton that I was really impressed by. One was that when she was up here in front of all of us, we asked a question. I don't remember exactly what the question was, but she said, "I don't know, and I'll get back to you." And if somebody doesn't know, that's the answer I want to hear. I don't want to hear somebody try to make something up and bamboozle me. I want them to be able to get the information and let me know. And then the other thing she asked me in a private interview, she asked me a question. She said, "What keeps you up at night that worries you about being on the ECA board?" And thankfully, I was able to say nothing, nothing. Thank God. I said, but I am, I talked about that 2009 EWG report and the misperception about our water quality. And I said, to me, we need to go above and beyond and do everything possible to make sure we have the absolute best water at all, just to dispel those, those rumors from people that read stuff and say, "Oh, I read it on the internet, it must be true," and to be really cognizant and conscious of that. And so I was impressed by the question that she wanted to know, what I felt as a board member might be a major issue for us.
Ms. Campbell?
Another thing I liked about Ms. Shelton was she wasn't resting on her laurels, she's ready to be gung-ho and go. I like that she was going to Toastmasters so she could be a better speaker. I thought, who at our age goes to Toastmasters to be a better speaker? And that was very impressive to me, that she was still trying to better herself as she went along. So I was very impressed with her.
Well, I don't know about anybody else, but I can count votes. Would someone like to make a motion and do this publicly? Do we need to do a private ballot? Mr. Perkins?
I move that we enter negotiations with Rebecca Shelton and offer her the job as executive director at ECUA.
Is there a second?
I'll second that. I do think that we may need to give our staff the top two, at least 2.
We'll do the second one after.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I'll rank her number 1. I'll second that.
Dr. Walker? Okay, we have a motion that we offer the job to Ms. Shelton with staff negotiating with her regarding the terms of that. I see no other lights. Please vote. And she is unanimously affirmed, so it's kind of bittersweet, isn't it, Mr. Sorrell? Yes, so we will empower you to reach out to her and begin the negotiations. Mr. Perkins?
Well, I'm going to do number 2 for discussion because it may not be unanimous or anything, but I think that, that I'd like to make a motion that in the event that we can't secure Rebecca Shelton as the executive director, we negotiate with Bud McCrory for that position.
Ms. Campbell?
I'll second that, but I do want to do discussion as well.
Okay, you're recognized.
That second spot was really tough for me. I'm kind of the same kind of person as Woody, Bruce Woody, and I really liked him a lot. I mean, if I just had to go and pick a second person, it would have been him. I liked a lot of what he had to say. He didn't have to say too much. I like that. But the one thing that stood out to me about McCrory over the others was he is used to our aquifer. He's used to the amount of rainfall that we have. He's worked in Mobile, Alabama for all these years. So I think that he is more of a fit for our utility. And he's got a great personality on top of it. So, but I really did like Woody, so that was a tough decision for me.
Well, and he's a baseball fan, so there you go. Yeah. I feel strongly that this position requires a professional engineer. You're dealing with engineers at every level of this organization and out in the community. Mr. Woody has a well-rounded background. He has led organizations, he's prepared the budgets, he knows sanitation, water, wastewater. I think his qualifications are impeccable, and we have on the one hand Ms. Shelton, who is vivacious and outgoing. Mr. Woody is a different personality type. When I talked to Mr. Beasley, I said something about it, and he said, well, he's an engineer, and, it's a different personality type. I think his qualifications are much, much more stellar for our second place. So he is my second choice. Mr. Perkins.
And I think it's probably elementary because I'm pretty sure we're going to end up with Ms. Shelton. I mean, it seemed like she was pretty motivated to be here.
Right.
But while I was impressed with Mr. Woody's technical skills, the things that I didn't see there were, that I was worried about, and they may be there and I just didn't see them. But when you're executive director of a large organization like this, you're not just over the engineers or the engineering department. It's a big organization, and not only do you have, customer service and public relations and finance, which McCrory had good skills in, human resources, finance, had a lot of experience in. You also are kind of the figurehead of the organization, and you not only communicate within the organization, you communicate outside of the organization. So as far as relationships with, the building community, environmental groups, the county commissioners, the city, the press, I just worried about the social skills with, with the other, with the candidate Woody from St. Louis. I mean, not St. Louis, but Missouri, but he, perfectly technical, competent, and they may be there. I mean, he did much better in his presentation than I expected. His interview with me was not that strong, but he did do a good job in the presentation. So it may be that he's, a diamond in the rough. But I just thought for our organization, and it would be a step up and a new step for McCrory. I mean, he has some executive experience, but it's at a fairly small utility. But he's a guy who's obviously worked hard. I like the fact that he worked his way up from the bottom, that he was, a front of the line employee and somebody that's been through it. I think that experience, in the trenches helps. But like I said, I think it's really a moot point. I fully anticipate that we'll be bringing Ms. Shelton on as a director, and frankly, would be fine with either one of the second choices. I just thought, in my opinion, for an executive director, Moody was a lot better choice.
Somebody.
Yeah, yeah, McCrory.
All right, we don't have a motion, and, we don't have to do that today, if we want.
Why don't we just negotiate and try and get our number one?
It's my
I think I did make a motion, but I'll withdraw it.
Oh, sorry, I apologize. All right, sounds good. All right, then if there are no other lights on, we have now.
I don't want to tie them up, though, I mean, they've been through this process for quite a few months, and, I mean, if we're going to rank the next two down, I'd like to do it today and let them know, at least let one person know, go away, I mean, not go away, but go, thank you for coming, but I don't want to tie somebody up any longer. If we're not interested, I think we need to at least rank top two so that we have one person to negotiate with and one person to go to if that doesn't work.
Actually, the motion is the property of the board, and I can't withdraw it without the second withdrawing it. So
Well, that's fine.
technically, it's still there.
It's still there,
And,
so.
and who did the second?
He made a motion, I
Yeah,
second.
she
Okay.
seconded it, so
That's-
I can't
that's
really
right.
withdraw it without
Okay.
her permission.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying why I think that we should go ahead and rank it. At least, I'm gonna say, since we are all kind of on the edge with that third person, let's just rank 1, 2, 3. Give the fourth person, a thank you very much for coming, and,
All right, you
Or
want
at
to do
least-
that
or at
on the
least-
ballot?
yeah,
Okay.
you know.
So, and actually,
I mean, we
all
can
we
do
need
it
to-
out loud. We don't have to do a ballot. I mean, if everybody agrees, but, okay.
well, we don't really need to do one. We've already made that
We
motion.
got one, so let's
we'll
do,
rank the
Well,
next.
the motion was just McCrory for
Yeah.
number 2.
Then that's the motion.
And then, can I add, can I make an amendment that we say Bruce Woody is number 3, and in that order, rank them and let them go and try to negotiate one first, 2 first, 3, and then,
So the
know.
motion is for McCrory as second and Bruce Woody as third?
yes.
Okay,
Second the amendment.
okay. Dr. Walker?
I think it would be simpler just to simply do rankings and see how they come out.
Okay.
The motion is stated would exclude, I guess it would exclude Mr. Coffey.
That's correct.
If the majority of the board thinks that's what we should do and should let him know, then that's fine with me. But
Perhaps we should ask Mr. Benzinger how he has previously done this, and he has experience with other people, candidates. Maybe you could weigh in, Mr. Benzinger.
Colin Benzinger Associates. There's lots of different ways people do it. Some will put it off, and, since there isn't a clear number 2, I would be tempted to put it off. But it's really your call. I understand not keeping the others on the hook, so to speak. I sense there's no support for Mr. Coffey as number 2, so I can certainly let him off the hook. I think any of either the 2 candidates that are number 2 would be thrilled to have the position if it doesn't work out with Mrs. Shelton. But I think Mr. Perkins is correct. I don't think you're going to get to number 2. So it may be that this is a discussion we don't really need to have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Campbell? Okay. So the motion is to offer the second place to Mr. McCrory with an amendment. What was the amendment? Sorry. And with Mr. Woody as the third choice. So that's the motion. There's no need to write it down. We can just vote on the motion. And it passes 3-1. So we will start with Ms. Shelton and go from there.
That was the amendment, now it's the main motion.
Gosh, thank you. The amendment passed, now it becomes the main motion. Sorry, please vote again. And it passes 3-1. Thank you all very much for a very intensive but good process. And Mr. Benzinger, thank you for all that you did, and Mr. Sorrell as well. You've been a participant in that, and sometimes that's a mixed feeling. Okay. We go now to approval of the minutes. It's already almost 4 o'clock. Is there a motion to approve the minutes? Mr. Perkins?
Madam Chairman, on item 13B of the minutes, it failed 2-2, and I thought I had voted against it. It should have failed 3-1. And I don't know if I need to amend the minutes here or what we do, but I'd like to move the minutes as amended, showing that vote is 3-1 on item 13B.
Okay. At what page is that?
It's on page 15 at the bottom.
Okay. Was it recorded by staff that way? Do we need to have a motion to reconsider? I mean, if you press the wrong button, we need to have a motion to reconsider.
All right. A motion to reconsider item 13B of the minutes.
Okay, were you on the prevailing side? You
It was
voted
2-2. There was, I don't know if we can reconsider.
So
There
it-
was no prevailing side.
It failed 2-2. So
No, I technically wasn't then.
okay, so,
We can just leave it. Forget it. We'll go.
okay, well, he just wants his vote recorded, but it would not change the outcome if we redid it. Okay. Yeah, okay, we'll give you a bye. All right. Okay, we can do that, yeah. All right, make sure that the minutes of this meeting reflect that, so that if he's ever called on it, that's the case. Okay.
Move approval of the minutes.
Okay, it's been moved. Is there a second? Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Please vote. And it passes 4-0. By the way, in the past, Mr. Odom served as our, thank you, parliamentarian. We haven't really officially named Mr. Beasley parliamentarian. We ought to think about Mr. Perkins.
My reading of it is, my Robert's Rules reading is about 20 years old. I'm sure there's probably some changes by now.
For the record, I was reaching for my speak button, and he beat me to it on the amendment.
Okay, good. Okay, good. Then you're safe. Okay. All right, we come to the report of the Citizens Advisory Committee. Ms. Campbell.
The Citizen Advisory Report is for the meeting of September 17th, 3 p.m. All members were present with the exception of Chuck Kimball, Randy Ponson, and Michelle Schneier. Item F was an awarded bid for the Mackey Key Sewer Rehabilitation. The motion was made by Mr. Perkins, seconded by Ms. Ritz, that the board approve and award the bid of the Mackey Key Sewer Rehabilitation to the low and fully responsive bidder, Pensacola Concrete Construction Company, Inc., in the total amount of $234,797.40, with funding from CIP Project RS 638 and a transfer of $77,000 from CIP Project RS 423D to RS 638, and the committee voted 8-0 in favor. Item G was an awarded bid for a 2019 to 25 electric motor and submersible pump repair and rewind services. The motion was made by Ms. Benson and seconded by Ms. Ben, that the board award the annual contract for electric motor and submersible pump repair and rewind services to Gulf Coast Electric Motor Services, Inc., Pensacola, Florida, the only responsive and best bidder, and approve the issuance of blanket purchase orders to Gulf Coast Electric Motor Services, Inc., in the total amount of $675,000 annually to cover the cost of motor pump and equipment repair for the Maintenance and Construction Department of the Water Production Department, with funding from the appropriate budget line item or CIP projects RS008X and RW522B. The term of this initial contract is for a period of 2 years, with 2 optional 2-year extensions upon the mutual agreement of the parties, with no change in unit cost pricing. The committee voted 8-0 in favor. Item H was the annual purchase of Purefil odor control filter media. The recommendation made by Ms. Ben, seconded by Ms. Ritz, that the board waive the normal bidding process and approve the sole source purchase of Purefil odor control media from Pump and Process Equipment Incorporated in Pensacola, Florida, at the unit prices indicated in the item. Due to the proprietary nature of this material for use at various ECUA sites, with funding from the appropriate budget line item for scrubber media in the first fiscal year 2020 operating budget. The committee voted 8-0 in favor. Item I was a waiver of bidding for liquid polymer. Recommendation was made by Mr. Perkins, seconded by Ms. Booker, that the board award the bidding process based on the prior trials and prices quotes and extend a contract for 1 year to Polydyne, Inc., out of Riceboro, Georgia, at the price of 93 cents per pound for bulk deliveries and 95 cents per pound for tote delivery, with funding from the appropriate budget line item. The committee voted 8-0 in favor. Item J was an air curtain incinerator purchase. The recommendation was made by Ms. Benson, seconded by Mr. Perkins, that the board approve the purchase of 2019 Model S 119R air burner from Air Burners, Inc. of Palm City, Florida, the lowest bidder, for a total price of $125,584 with funding from CIP Project RT 804. The committee voted 8-0 in favor. Item K was the purchase of dumpster and roll-off containers for commercial service. The recommendation was made by Ms. Ben, seconded by Ms. Booker, that the board authorize staff to issue purchase orders for various sizes of dumpsters and roll-off containers to the low bidders Wastequip, Inc. of Lakeland, Florida, in the amount of $167,469, and Cascade Engineering, Inc. of Grand Rapids, Minnesota, in the amount of $30,156, with funding from CIP Project CT 503 with a sanitation capital improvement budget. The committee voted 8-0 in favor. Item L was the contract extension for truck tire retread services. The recommendation was, motion was made by Dr. Walker and seconded by Ms. Ben, that the board approve the first of two one-year extensions of the existing contract with Howell Truck Giant Tire of Pensacola, Florida, for services related to the retreading of truck tires for the Ecua fleet, with costs not to exceed $250,000. Funding for these services will be provided with appropriate line item with the sanitation operating budget. The committee voted 8-0 in favor. Item M was the purchase of new tires for the Ecua fleet. A motion was made by Mr. Perkins, seconded by Mr. Hammer, for the recommendation that the board authorize staff to issue a purchase order to State of Florida and Florida Sheriff's Association approval local vendors at the current State of Florida and Florida Sheriff Association's contract pricing through September 30th of 2020, with an estimated annual funding of $450,000 from the appropriate line item of the sanitation operating budget. The committee voted 8-0 in favor. Item N was commercial sanitation truck purchase. The recommendation was that motion was made by Ms. Ritz and seconded by Ms. Booker, that the board waive the normal purchasing guidelines and approve the purchase of a 2020 auto car chassis with a Galbraith 60,000-pound hook lift body from the Action Truck Center of Dothan, Alabama, for a total price of $274,040, with the pricing on the Sourcewell National Purchasing Contract number 081716 and funding from CIP Project RT 803. The committee voted 8-0 in favor. Item O was a residential sanitation truck replacement lease program. A motion was made by Ms. Benson, seconded by Ms. Ritz, that the board, number one, waive normal purchasing guidelines and approve the purchase of 6 auto car chassis with New Way Rotopack automated side loader bodies and 2 Diesel Eagle chassis with New Way rear loader bodies from the Sansom Equipment Company of Mobile, Alabama, for a total price of $2,863,864, with pricing based on the Sourcewell National Purchasing Contract bid. Number 2, authorize staff to develop and enter into a 7-year leasing program purchase of these vehicles in the amount of $3,375,743, which includes $511,879 for the previously approved purchase of yard waste prototype collection truck using CIP Project RT 400 Annual Residential Vehicle Replacement Program, as approved by the board as part of the fiscal year 2020 sanitation CIP budget, along with a transfer of $75,750 from the Sanitation Transfer Station CIP project. The committee voted 8-0 in favor. Item P was accidental water loss adjustment. The recommendation was the board retain the existing policy in place, which provides customers 2 adjustments for accidental water loss. No action and no vote was taken on this item. Item Q was security deposits for customer classes other than single residential, family residential. The recommendation was that the board retain the existing policy pertaining to security deposits for customer classes other than single family residential. Comments were made by many members and it was discussed at great length. A motion was made by Ms. Benson, seconded by Mr. Perkins, that the ECUA refund security deposits to any business that has 60 months of good payment history and has no late fee payments. The committee vote was 7-1, with Dr. Walker voting against the motion. It passed. I would like to move items F through P and Q. And there was no action taken on P.
Okay, it's been moved. Is there a second? Dr. Walker?
I would request that item Q be separated from the others.
Okay,
Okay, I'd like to then move items F through O for approval.
Second.
it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Dr. Walker?
Madam Chairman, I think Mrs. Campbell made a misstatement in one place, and perhaps it needs to be clarified for the official record. On item O, down at line 8, Mrs. Campbell, you said that the total amount was $3,375,743.
I'm sorry, $3,375,743. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, that one was a long tongue twister.
Okay,
Thank you for correction.
sure. All right, then we're voting on all items except for Q. Did you have something more to add, Ms. Campbell?
No.
Okay. All right, please vote. Passes 4-0. Did you want to bring up item Q, Dr. Walker? Oh, you just want to separate it out, okay. Do you have a motion on Q? Because there's really no motion on that. Mr. Perkins? Oh, Ms. Campbell.
I move the committee recommendation.
Okay, Mr. Perkins moves the committee recommendation. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Please vote. Oh, Ms. Campbell?
I think I do understand Dr. Walker's hesitation, but I think that we all 7 agreed, let's give it a try. And then if we have to turn around, then we will, but I think it's a good policy.
Yeah, it was well vetted by the committee. We thought about it, and actually we've thought about it over a period of a year. And so I concur with the recommendation. Okay, please vote. And it passes 3-1. Thank you. Does that conclude your report?
Yes, ma'am, it does.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell. Item 9A is interlocal agreement for recyclables processing. Apparently, these contracts are up, and we're renegotiating with Fairhope, Mobile, Daphne, and Foley, Alabama, and Pensacola and Fort Walton Beach for a new recyclables contract. Mr. Sorrell, do you want to outline this?
Yes, ma'am. We've renegotiated all of the recycling contracts. All these are on the sliding scale, very similar to what we used in the past. Because of the significant drop in the commodities value, there's a slight increase in the sliding scale in order to provide us with additional revenue to offset our costs. But beyond that, it's basically an identical agreement than what we've had in the past. Every one of these are going to support this except Okaloosa County. This week, the Okaloosa County Commissioners voted not to be part of this. Their reasons are really pretty valid because the commodity values have dropped. They're down to $47 a ton approximately right now. And their cost to transport the materials by a private company here, in addition to the inbound per ton fee they have to pay, just made it prohibitive for them because of the distance and the time and the cost of the private trucking company. So at this point, the contracts will be valid for everybody in here except Okaloosa, and I'm asking you to extract that one and approve the rest of the contracts, ma'am.
Thank you. Is there a motion? Mr. Perkins?
I move the recommendation with the exception of Okaloosa County.
Is there a second?
Second?
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Mr. Perkins? Oh,
I'm just,
go ahead.
pleased that you were able to work with all these different entities and continue recycling. I certainly understand Okaloosa County's no business decision, no animus or anything there. It's just good, sound decision for their ratepayers. But whenever you get this many different entities negotiating and you're able to pull that off and get all of them in agreement and cross the Ts and dot the Is, that's a lot of work, and I'm kind of glad that you brought them all at once instead of us having to do them each individually. So I'd just like to commend the staff on the hard work that went into this recommendation.
Here, here. Dr. Walker? No? Ms. Campbell?
I think it says a lot about the citizens of Northwest Florida and South Alabama.
Absolutely. Okay.
I did have something, Madam Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I asked each of the four candidates what they saw as the future of the MRF. And I think you might be interested to know that 3 of the 4 said, you can't not do it. You have to do it. Even if you're losing money, you have to do it. It's just, it's one of those things that has public support. There's a public support for it. They want it. Public wants it. All these other communities would be putting pressure on us to continue providing a facility and our own people. And so 3 of the 4 said you just can't do it. 1 of the 4 said do a cost-benefit analysis and kill it or keep it. But the other 3 said no, you got to keep it.
Thank you for that. Ms. Campbell?
One of the reasons I liked Ms. Shelton is that she was open to the future. Technology is going to bring better solutions than a MRF down the road. But right now, that's the best we can do, so.
Concur. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Please vote. And it passes 4-0. Item 9B is award of bid, Well Line Road Lift Station Replacement. Mr. Sorrell?
Yes, ma'am. This is more than a lift station. This is a major upgrade in that particular area. It's going to involve replacement of the lift station, but a lot of the gravity sewer, the force main, and demolition of the old lift station, construction of the new lift station. This is an area where we're having a large amount of SSOs, sanitary sewer overflows. Every time we get a major storm and so on, and there just isn't any additional capacity in the station. So this is a major upgrade that we're going to make, and it'll give us capacity for the future. But the biggest thing is, and the reason why we're doing this, is to stop some of the SSOs that we have no means to stop otherwise. Every time it rains or we have a major storm, we have to send tanker trucks up there and tanker the materials to the wastewater treatment plant. So this will offset that. It's going to take a while to do. It's a major effort. This is not just a lift station, as I mentioned. If you look at the base bids over here, I mean, it's about double the cost of our normal lift stations, and the 2 bids that we received are very, very close. So I highly recommend this to you, and this is one we need to do as quickly as we possibly can. We're going to to try to keep the cost down as much as you can. We're going to try to buy the generator and some of the pumps and mixers and things on our own. That'll save us the markup because contractors mark up those costs. There's also taxes involved. So we've made an effort here to procure the type of equipment we need, the generator that we're accustomed to award to a good contractor, but certainly either one of these contractors are great, and get this contract underway right away in order to stop some of the SSOs at a major lift station.
Is there a motion?
I move
Dr.
approval of the staff recommendation.
Ms. Campbell?
I do too.
And did you want to speak, Ms. Campbell?
I think the worst title I've ever searched in my life was right behind this lift station. But I'd like to say that I was happy that we came to agreement with the seller of the property, and do we know how long it's going to take to get this project done?
I don't know exactly, but I can tell you it'll take about a year.
Okay.
It's a big project.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
How much of this is responding to existing infrastructure challenges, and how much is to create capacity for new growth, Mr. Sorrell?
Well, to be honest, the major effort here is to stop the problems we're having with the SSOs. and with the fractured infrastructure and just undersized everything and some old pipes and so on. That's a major effort. But it will provide additional capacity. I can't give you a percentage, but it'll provide capacity, like we always do when we upgrade a lift station. It'll provide capacity for future development that we didn't have, and it'll be a significant amount.
So this would come under I&I because it's,
Yes, ma'am, it will. I believe it will fall very definitely under our influent infiltration program.
okay. And there's a lot of growth out there in development. Do we have developers who are paying impact fees which will help offset some of these costs?
Yes, ma'am. Normally, we make development pay for development. You know, if they're going to develop something in the area and they have to upgrade the lift station, it'll be on them. In this particular case, that's not necessarily the issue. The issue is with the inferior infrastructure and the SSO. So we've got to act on our behalf, and then certainly there'll be capacity available for the development, and yes, they'll have to pay impact fees.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Walker?
It is my understanding, Madam Chairman, that two major developments are expected to be put in place immediately north of this lift station, and will make use of it. And by major, what I hear is something like 700 houses each, something like that.
Thank you, Dr. Walker. Ms. Campbell?
So this would have to be done regardless if there were development was coming or not? Mr. Sorrell?
Yes, ma'am, that's absolutely correct. This is to solve our problem with inflow and infiltration. As a side benefit, we'll upgrade the lift station and put in the proper pumps and generators and all those things. Now, Dr. Walker mentioned some developments. He's absolutely correct. There are a lot of developments that are looking at this area, but there will be costs on them because they'll have to upgrade the infrastructure in order to get it to this lift station. But what we'll do is we'll make the pumping station capable.
Thank you. Mr. Perkins?
So because it's helping with I&I, it will cost toward our targets on the consent order?
Mr. Sorrell?
Yes, sir, I believe it will.
Anything else? Okay, did we have a motion on that one? Yes. Okay, please vote. And it passes 4-0. Item 9C is write-off of uncollectible balances. This is something that we do periodically when people leave the area and leave us with a little bit of an amount due. And I know we're aggressive about trying to pursue these charges, but this is a bookkeeping item. Is there a motion?
Move staff recommendation with discussion.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Ms. Campbell, did you?
I would just like to point out for those in the audience or listening that we do write off these so that we can, take care of housekeeping. But that does not mean that we don't go, aggressively try to collect anything that is due to the ECUA, including if we need liens on property held by them. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Ms. Campbell. Mr. Perkins?
And we've also collected 99.17 of what's owed us. I mean, any business that can do that, we're really pretty sure we get that money for our ratepayers.
Very impressive, yes. Ms. Campbell?
Every year I wish they worked for me.
Yeah. Okay, seeing no more lights, please vote on 9C. And it passes 4-0. Item 9D is award of bid annual contract for small-scale utility projects 2019. These are projects that fall much below most of our large projects, and it's more efficient to have a umbrella bid. We have two bidders, and the recommendation is that the board award the annual contract for small-scale utility projects 2019 to Warrington Utilities and Excavating, Inc., the lowest responsive bidder. Is there a motion?
Move the recommendation.
Second.
Moved and seconded.
And,
Ms. Campbell?
You can always tell who's busy and who's not when you get these bids. This bid is 1/2 the price. That's pretty wild.
Yeah, kind of amazing. I see no more lights. Please vote. And it passes unanimously. Item 9E is notification of emergency purchase residential collection carts. Mr. Sorrell, if you just want to tell us about this.
Yes, ma'am. I had to issue or authorize an emergency purchase order for the purchase of the residential sanitation collection carts. Essentially, we were out with the growth in the sanitation system and the number of carts that had broken. We just couldn't wait until, the next allocation. So we had to go ahead and just do the emergency purchase order. And we spent $90,107.37, be out of the capital improvement budget in order to buy sufficient number of carts to get us until next year.
Mr. Sorrell, what's the turnaround time on these orders?
I think we've already got these, if I remember correctly. I think Randy told me we already got them. It takes a while to fabricate them because we get the ECUA stamped on them. I think we're also putting additional information on them about recyclables on the cans now. So I think that's
Good.
making a difference too. To make a long story short, I think it takes about 4 to 6 weeks to get them.
Thank you. And we don't need to vote on that. I see no more lights. 9F is emergency purchase notification replacement manhole at the intersection of Montclair Road and Marseille Drive. Mr. Sorrell?
Yes, ma'am. Another emergency purchase order we had to do. I didn't think it was going to cost this much, but the manhole at this particular location at Montclair Road and Marseille Drive actually sunk. And what it did is it left a depression in the pavement, and it actually caused the pipes underground to break. So we had to get Pensacola concrete construction out there because of the depth. When they got in there, they found they had to do dewatering. I mean, there was water everywhere, so they had to do dewatering, and it took much longer time than normal and what was expected. We thought it would cost less than $50,000, and I think I reported that to the board earlier, but it ended up costing $88,178.79, and it is completed now, ma'am.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, then we come now to the budget report. Ms. Shelton? So how are we going to do this whole Shelton thing that we've got coming up?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. My name has a D in it instead of a T, so I just have to enunciate.
Enunciate.
So our monthly budget to actual report, I would just like to point out that even though I ran this in the system as of September the 9th, the numbers you see here reflect actual amounts posted through about mid-August. So we'll have the rest of August, because we don't get invoices in for things purchased at the end of August. We won't get them till mid-September. So we'll have the rest of August, about a month and a half more of expenses to go this fiscal year for these reports. So you can see that sanitation and MRF are both continue to be over budget, but that's something that's been happening all year. Repair and maintenance on vehicles is one of the big culprits for that. And as those trucks age, then they cost more to repair. And so, of course, we're trying to purchase new trucks, each year on the leasing program. So if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
So have we anticipated this problem in next year's budget so that we don't have this kind of overage?
I believe we did budget more for repair and maintenance and
Plus new vehicles.
and the new with the
Right.
new vehicles, hopefully 10 of the older ones will roll off. The more problematic ones will roll off of the fleet. So,
Thank you. Mr. Sorrell?
Yeah, I just wanted to tell you that I think 3 of the new trucks came in, I think they were this week. And as quick as we get them in and put decals on them, they're going on the street. And there's additional ones that are expected any time, so that should help tremendously.
Good. Thank you for that.
it takes about a year once those trucks are ordered. It takes about a year to actually get them here. So we ordered 10 last October,
Right.
and they're just now getting here. So once we get the lease financing in place, and that will come back to the board for approval, once we get that in place for the 2020 purchase, we'll order 10 more, or 8, because we're buying that other truck, and then it'll take another year. So we're kind of, there is a lag time where we see some results on those.
Thank you, Michelle.
Okay.
Anyone else? Okay. We have, thank you for your report. Dr. Walker, you had, oh no, I'm sorry, we need to go to the executive director's report. I apologize.
Yes, ma'am. First off, at the last meeting, the board rejected the bids on the Gillimard tank property. And I just want to let you know that we're in the process of amalgamating those two parcels and looking at an easement there. And we'll put that out to bid, and we should get that back to you before long. What we're trying to do is maximize the return the ECUA can get on the property. So that's underway. There's some surveying and some legal work that has to be done, but we should have that back. The compost operation is doing fine. We're selling everything we make, so we're not having any real issues there. And we just keep ramping it up and ramping it up. And the only thing I say is we're selling everything. It's doing very well. That's been a real plus for the ECUA. It's been a huge cost avoidance with regard to maintenance and the cost of natural gas and the landfilling of yard debris and so on. So it's just been a win-win across the board. The materials recycling facility is doing well right now. Actually, we've slowed down the line. What I call it the picker line, or the line where they actually go through and they'll select materials out of there, and that's where we take out all the bowling balls and the dead animals and things we're not supposed to get. But anyway, we've slowed the line down quite a bit, and what that's done is allowed us to make a better material. And the consequence of that is that we're selling virtually everything we make. There's very little now that we aren't selling. Now, the mixed paper, to give you an example, we make about 100 bales a day, and there's about 7 to 8 of those that go in the landfill. All the rest are being sold. Now, they're not bringing much on the market, but they're being sold. The 7 to 8 bales are mostly residue anyway, so there's very little there. But that's working really well, and the commodities values dropped again. Like I said, it was $49 a ton recently. Now it's down to $47. So overall, though, it's the MRF's doing about as well as we could possibly do. It's never going to be a profit center, but it is recycling a lot of materials, and it is avoiding huge costs associated with the landfilling of materials, and it's also the right thing to do. We're recycling materials, and it's going back into the market. Some of the rigid mixed plastics, that's like the old paint buckets and things like that. Those are being a little bit difficult to get rid of. People just don't want that kind of materials right now, but we have very little of that coming in. And once we get the air curtain and get it here in operation, we'll be able to resolve some of these other issues. But right now, it's doing about as good as we can possibly do. You know, what can I say other than the fact it's the right thing to do, and you know, we're recycling everything and we're selling virtually everything. We just had the hearing, and I think on with AE New, or not AE New, with Zero Waste, and Mr. Beasley's going to talk to you about that. But basically, he did a great job in that hearing. He's a Showtime guy. He's really, really good, and he's if you go to court, I recommend him. That's the end of my report, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Sorrell. And with that lead in,
Madam Chairman.
Mr. Beasley. Mr. Perkins.
Why would anyone throw away a perfectly good bowling ball? No, I'm kidding. On the Gilliamard Street property, you know, I was real disappointed in the bids last time. Can we at least take advantage of some of the free advertising, like Craigslist, even if it's just a link to the sale that says, you know, 3/4 of an acre downtown, and a link to wherever we're advertising it, and maybe on our ECUA Facebook page, put it out there, because I just don't think very many people knew about that last time. I think if we got it out there a little better, we'd get more participation on that property.
Thank you, Mr. Perkins. Is it listed with our realtors, Mr. Sorrell?
No, I don't think it's listed with the realtors, but we'll communicate with them. We'll do some of the other things. I'll talk to Patty with purchasing, and we'll try to be a little bit more innovative once we get the amalgamation of the two parcels done and so on, because it may be worth more. I'm just not sure. I went down and looked at it, and I don't know what I'd do with it if I had it, but at least it is property downtown.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Now, Mr. Beasley.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. My report will be limited to the ZWE action. We did conduct a multi-day arbitration in front of a 3-board panel. All 3 arbitrators were attorneys selected prior to my taking the case, but one was from here, one was from Louisiana, and one was from Alabama. Not real sure how they got selected. They all were very attentive. They all showed a clear grasp and understanding of the subject matter and had done their homework. The hearing went pretty much as expected. It did take a lot longer than we anticipated, but sometimes they do. They are due us a decision. There were some post-hearing briefings on certain legal issues that was permitted, and they are due us a decision on October 17th. And so there were no surprises. The claims and defenses of ZWE were as we expected, and we feel like it was a good presentation on behalf of ECUA. There wasn't anything that came out in the hearings that I was worried about from the ECUA's perspective as how we had handled the matter.
Thank you.
Was it binding arbitration?
It is binding.
And you said October 17th, you expect a response? Mr.
Yes, October 17th, per the rules of arbitration. They could ask for it to be extended, but with this group, we had reached a point during the presentation that you sometimes get what I call a saturation level with the trier of fact, and all three of them had reached a saturation level well before we had concluded, and I think they had a firm grasp on the situation.
Good, good. Thank you for doing that. Okay. We have no unfinished business, new business, Town of Century, Dr. Walker.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I wish to inform my fellow board members that the Town of Century is in all kinds of trouble, financial trouble especially. You probably all know that, but I just wanted to mention it to you because there's every possibility that the Town of Century might and/or other entities such as the legislative delegation might turn to ECUA in search of some kind of aid to the Town of Century. I have no idea about what the details might be, but I would expect that sooner or later they will be making some kind of request for rescue from us. I'm going to be talking with Mr. Sorrell after this meeting about this same topic, but if any of you have anything you wish to put in on it at the present time, please do so.
Thank you, Dr. Walker. I know that the state is looking very carefully at this, and Buzz Eddy has been engaged by them to help try to get their finances in order, and they are taking some proactive steps on this, but you know, the worst possible thing would be for the state to dissolve the Town of Century, which I don't think anybody wants to do. They want to help, you know, bolster them so that they can succeed. So thank you for bringing that up. We come to board communications. Mr. Perkins?
You know, another thing that impressed me about Ms. Shelton was she did send a thank you note, you know, and I thought that was a nice personal touch.
Yeah, yeah. But she didn't like you. Anything else under board communications? We have another open forum. I have no pink slips. Did anyone wish to address us in open forum? If not, we're adjourned. Thank you all so much. Good work.